one of the follow-up questions I was going to ask, and we've touched on it, but this is an opportunity to be able to go further into it, is can readiness be accelerated or does experience force it? So we talked about consequences. Consequences force those types of things.
They
And then
do.
there's the how do we accelerate it for the people that want to avoid going through those consequences? One of the things I'll joke with people and say, you know what, there's one thing that you can always count on, and that's rock bottom.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, if you want to wait on that, if you want to go through that, my job is two things. I can either help you with preventative measures or reactionary solutions.
Yeah.
I can help you avoid it before it becomes a problem, or I can be there when it actually happens. What really comes down to is can you afford to fail?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
for me, if I'm trying to accelerate it, one of the things that I'm looking at is how important is this to you? And what happens if this doesn't go the way that you want it to be able to go? What's it going to cost you?
Yeah.
Because when I can answer that question that way, then it gives me an opportunity to be able to decide, is it something where I can wait for them to have that experience, or do I need to start looking at what story to tell them? So storyteller, and that's where I decide which story am I going to give them. Is it a predictive story? Is it a cautionary tale? Am I making them the hero? All of those different things factor into that for me. But for you, when you're looking at readiness be accelerated, or is it experience that's going to force that decision? What are some of the things that you're looking at?
Yeah, yeah. So the answer to the question is yes, to both, right? Readiness can be accelerated and experience
Mhm,
is going to force it, right? So
mhm.
I think as an entrepreneur, you've got to figure out which, if both of these can happen, which what I prefer to happen and how do I orchestrate what I want to have happen, right? So I think you want to be on the side of, I mean, the experience forcing it kind of I read into that you have less control, right? Right. So it's just the circumstances that you're being thrust into and trying to react to, which
Dictating it,
when you
yeah.
react, you tend not to have as great of an outcome as if you drive what you're doing. So I would say the first part of that is to control what happens and to try to accelerate it because by accelerating it and that's all about planning, right?
Mhm.
So if you're planning in advance, you're going to accelerate decision making. You're going to accelerate circumstances, and you'll have ways to you're building in that muscle memory we talked about in the past of being able to react when circumstances happen. So I would rather be in, I want to control my fate if I can. We can't always control our fate, but if I can control most of what happens to me, I'm in a better position than if I'm just reacting to everything that's happening. Right. So,
Mhm.
yeah. And I don't know
Okay.
if I
Well,
answered your question, but
no, you did. You did. I mean, the whole point to it is exactly that. It's know that I want to control the things that I can control.
yeah,
And that's really what the question is. Are you willing to take the preventative measures and say, I want to get out ahead of something that could potentially go wrong? Or are
yeah,
you someone that says, I'll deal with that when I get to it?
yeah,
And there's a joke where I normally post different things on LinkedIn. I have something
mm,
where I take these cartoons and different things, and
yeah,
I'll post like an image, and there's an image of a bridge that's all collapsed, and
yeah,
it's like this is the bridge you said you would cross when you got to it.
yeah, yeah,
And it was just a reminder that people, oh, I'll deal with that later. And then when
mm,
it gets there, then it's like, oh, and then that's when the consequences and the costs start to kick in. So there are some
right,
people that are thinking about that leading
yeah,
up to it.
yeah,
And then there is some people that are saying, I'll cross that bridge when I get to it. And then you
yeah,
just got to hope that the bridge is there.
yeah,
And
yeah,
if not, then you're probably going to pay a premium
yeah,
because that's when someone can say, okay, well, now you really need it and I can afford to charge you more. It's
exactly,
my the way my brain works is I'd rather do it when I can get it done at a more
yeah,
affordable thing by getting out
yeah,
ahead of it
yeah,
than it being something that I have to wait and deal with on the back end. It's
right,
almost like healthcare.
yeah,
And anyone that's worked with healthcare, you can either go to the gym or you can pay the doctor visits and
yeah,
all the
yeah,
rest have to go in and deal with all the extra costs that come with
yeah,
because you put that off. So for me, I kind of remind myself in those situations and I'm like, could I deal with it later? How much is it going to cost me to deal with it later?
yeah,
So
yeah,
I want to use that to transition into one of the biggest competitors that's out there, and that is the status quo.
mhm,
There's you can do something about it, you cannot do something about it, and then there's I'm just gonna kind of stick with where I'm at because it's not as big of a headache for me yet.
right.
So not deciding feels neutral, but it isn't. Indecision is a decision. So why is doing nothing still a strategic decision, and what does it usually cost people?
Well, I mean, we just talked about the world changes dynamically every second, right? Every
Mm,
day, every minute, every hour, however you want to define it. The world is constantly changing, competitors are changing. So the world around you is always changing. And so if you decide, I'm not going to do anything, well, the world's not going to stop to wait for you to do something. It's going
mhm,
to continue to change. And so by deciding not to do anything, you've decided, you've made a decision. And that decision is, now your fate is in the hands of the environment that's
yeah,
changing around you every second of the day. And so, hopefully it changes to your favor. More than likely it's not, you know. And so now you've got to deal with all this change that you could have avoided. That the world was going to change anyway, but you could have anticipated how the world was going to change and made a decision to, you know, act a certain way based
mm,
on what you thought might happen. And now you're so much better off than sitting back and doing nothing, for whatever reason. Maybe you're in analysis paralysis.
yeah,
And as the world changes, as I said, more times than not, the changes aren't going to be in your favor. And so, not doing anything might be what makes you fail.
yeah, yeah. All right, well, let's spin it because a consumer can hear that and go, "All right, well, there's I can see how that would be an issue." But let's also talk about it from a business standpoint. Sometimes you have a great idea
Yeah.
and you sit on it and go, "You know what? Well, I got time for that." And the status quo can be, whether it's something that doesn't exist or something that is already out there. One of the things that I look at in that situation is competition.
Yeah.
And who moves into that gap while we're sitting there maintaining and spinning our wheels saying, well, we're good right now. As a disruptor, and we talked about disruptors before, I love when people do something like that because I'm like, okay, so you saw that there was a way to be able to fix it and you opted not to do something about it. You just opened the door for me to be able to come in and be able to address it. And again, that's where it opens up the door for other people to be able to step in. And then it goes back to what I was saying, where I said Jeff is great because
Yeah.
Jeff understood how to be able to say the where, the when, the how, and I know
Yeah.
when you're going to run into those consequences.
Yeah.
Um, that is part of where I look at the status quo of someone that realizes there's a more efficient way or a better way to do something. But because of the system they have in place, they said, you know what, it would cost me more to fix it to make that improvement than
Mhm.
to just stay right where I'm at. That
Right.
opens the door for competition. That's how
Mm.
I view it. But I
Yeah.
would love to get your take on it as well.
Yeah, I mean, that's one thing that you have to be concerned about. It does open up the door for competition, which, depending on who the competition is, if the competition is a lot better funded than you may not be able to enter they may set the barrier to entry so high, coming
Mhm.
in, that even with this novel idea, you can't enter the market because the barrier to entry is so high. But the other thing you have to think about is, with any idea, there are three scenarios. You can enter the market too soon, you can enter
Mhm.
the market right on time, or you can enter the market too late. Any of those might have something to do with competition, but they don't necessarily have to do anything with competition. So it's
Sure.
just, I mean, I've had a couple scenarios where I've started ventures and it was just too early. People weren't
Mhm.
weren't ready for the what we were bringing to market, and so the business never took off. Right. Most of the things that I've done, it's been right on time. There might have been competition. There might have been little competition, um, and those ventures tended to do well. And then, you have scenarios where you're entering the market too late, and then you're having the scenario of, what's happening when you're entering late. Is there that big gorilla in the market that's set the barrier so high you can enter? Or, is there just so much competition that, entering the marketplace, there's no way for you to differentiate, you know? And
Yeah.
so you're gonna fail because, you can't create a unique a value proposition for your prospective customers. You can't differentiate from everyone else that's already out there. There's so much. There's so many people out there, and there's so many options for customers with whatever your product or service is. So yeah,
Okay.
I think you can have any of these scenarios. Ideally, again, you want to be there. It's absolute right time.
Mhm.
I actually think it's a great thing for there to be some competition, because competition is actually validating that there's a market need for whatever your product or service is.
Yeah,
not
you've
having
referenced
any
that. Yeah.
competition might mean that there's actually no market. You could legitimately be the first person to think of this. Its probability of that is pretty close to 0, but that is a possibility. But more than likely, the lack of competition is more of an indication that there's no market. And, so
Yeah. Yeah. No, I love it. That moves us away from status quo and it talks more about timing. And I think this is a great thing to be able to tap into. And let me cover it from a really simple down way of being able to explain. You said there's the people that enter too early, the people that enter right on time, and then the people that enter too late. Let me just give you a scenario. It's funny to me because, as you said,
yeah,
it was the first thing that came to mind for me. There's the early bird gets the worm, and the second mouse gets the cheese.
yeah,
So
yeah,
it's one of those things of you can go in early, but you have to understand the timeline
yeah,
and you have to have the patience to be able to say, well, if I'm the first person in, then I have to be patient enough to be able to plant the seed of that idea and realize that my marketing eventually is going to be one of the things that I'm looking at messaging. If I'm positioning it,
mhm,
I'm going
mhm,
to say that I was the first person.
yeah,
So when other people pop up and they come up with spin-offs of what it is that I did, that second mouse getting the cheese,
yeah,
it's one of those things of, yeah, they came in, but they're basically doing a spin-off of what I've already had. So
yeah,
you can go with the person that's coming up with a variation of what I'm doing, or you can
right,
go with the person that was actually the original person that thought it through. And
yeah,
as long as what you have is solid, then that's one of the ways that someone may look at it. Perfect timing, that's ideal. Like
yeah,
that's the thing that we really, really want to be able to look at. And then entering too late, we see a lot of that.
mhm,
And this is where I take such umbrance with the gurus that will put something out there like as a trend and oh I'll show you how to be able to do this. By the time you start telling other people how to be able to do it, you've used it so many different
yeah, yeah,
times.
yeah,
It's already watered down. And by the time you give it, like, it may be good for the first 100 people. It
yeah,
may be good for the first 1,000 people. But when
right,
you have something where you're teaching everyone how to do the same thing the same way,
yeah,
then you're saturating the market and the return on your investment isn't going to be the same. So
yeah,
I think that's why it's one of the reasons why I want to pause for a second and identify what that looks like.
right,
There's different scenarios. There's the people that chase trends. By the time you realize it's a trend, if you're not one of the first people that's entering into it, let's break it down what it looks like. If it's 7 to 12 touch points, or to for someone to really recognize you, that's what it used to be.
yeah,
Now we have AI that's teaching people how to do social media, posting, and all the rest of the stuff. So what used to be 7 to 12 is more like 20 to 25
yeah,
because there's so many people that are all now experts in doing something that you have to be able to cut through the noise and you have
yeah,
to figure out how to really differentiate yourself from everyone else. So if you're entering into a market that is already saturated,
yeah,
then you have to set your expectations of, I'm probably not going to make a lot of money with this
yeah,
initially until I can figure out how to be able to differentiate myself from everyone else.
right, right,
And then there's the flip side to that. If you go in too early, you can be the person that's yelling in that room, like on your soapbox on the corner, and people like, who's that crazy guy that keeps talking about this? And they don't know that it's a need until it becomes a need. So
yeah,
it's why it's so important to validate. And this is why I love that you said, sometimes you want to be able to find out if there's a competitor out there. Because if it's a competitor out there, then it validates the idea and it means that you're not going to be the first person. You're not going to be the crazy person standing on the corner.
right,
And you're, depending on how much competition you can find, it means that you're not the last person coming in and you're not on the wrong end of a pyramid scheme of, oh yeah, try this. And then there's 1,000 people that have already done it. So
yeah, yeah,
that's one of the things that stood out to me in what you were saying. And I think it's important for people to understand and get that context.
mm,
Evaluate where you are, and that's again kind of goes back to situational awareness.
yeah,
If you realize you're the only person talking about it, understand what that means. If you
yeah,
realize there's a lot of people talking about it, more than you feel like you can compete against,
mhm,
understand what that means. And
yeah,
if there are just enough people, then it's a what is it? Too hot, too cold, just right. You know what I mean?
yeah,
It's a
yeah,
Goldilocks type of thing.
yeah,
Like
yeah,
I will bring it back to children's stories and stuff like that because it's one of the simplest ways to understand it.
yeah,
When you
yeah,
know what it is that you're looking at, if it's too much of one thing or too much of the other, then you have to understand what you're putting yourself into and what
right,
kind of situation, what kind of pathway.
yeah,
But if you can find just enough people and you feel like you have a good handle on it, that's the sweet spot that you're talking about. So
mhm,
that's what I heard in what you were saying. And that's why I thought it was really valuable and said, let me just pause there
right,
because that's a takeaway that I don't think a lot of people are paying attention to. They don't know where they are in a situation to be able to read it properly. And we are talking about reading a room.